Okay, for our session this afternoon, we will be having the one sample z-test. Let's go over what a sample z-test first is all about. It is a statistical test for the mean of a population. It is used when the n, that's the number of frequency, the total number of frequency, is simply greater than or equal to 30. Or when the population is normally distributed and the population deviation is known. So we have here the formula for the z-test. So take note of this. We have this formula. This formula will be used if ever the population standard deviation is given. If the sample standard deviation is given, then you will be using the second example. Anyway, the two are just the same. It's just that in the first formula, you are given the population standard deviation. In the second formula, you are given the sample standard deviation. Okay, let's go over the formula now. So we have, okay, so take note of that. Z is the one sample z-test there. Sorry for that. Okay. X bar, that's the sample mean. The mu there, that's the letter U. That's the population mean. You have there the standard deviation of the population. This one. Over here. The sample standard deviation over here, and of course the number of observations in a sample. Okay, so take note, the sample should be greater than or equal to 30. This is one thing that you need to remember. You will use our one sample z-test if the n, that's the number of observations, is greater than or equal to 30. Now let's go to our first example. Okay, let's have the assumptions first. So take note of this. Number 1, subjects are randomly selected. Number 2, population distribution is normal. Number 3, these are the things that you need to assume in a sample z-test. The population should be known. Number 4, cases of the sample should be independent. And number 5, take note of that, the sample size should be greater than or equal to 30. And these are the procedures, by the way. Step number 1, set up the hypotheses. Okay, we have here the null hypothesis and the alternative hypothesis. Now, it's easier if you're gonna start with the null, no, not the null, the alternative hypothesis, because usually the alternative hypothesis rather is given in the problem, and you just take the opposite of that. That is your null hypothesis. So you begin with your alternative hypothesis because that's usually what is given in the problem, and then you make your null hypothesis out of it. Don't worry, we will have an example on this as we go on with our discussion about the z-test today. Now, number 2, set the level of significance and determine the critical value of z. Number 3, we have here calculate the sample mean if it's not given. If it's given, then just simply identify what the sample mean is. Number 4, calculate the value of the sample z using the formula we have mentioned a while ago. And number 5, we have here the decision making. If the computed z is less than the critical z, do not reject HO. Do not reject the null hypothesis. If the computed z is greater than or equal to the critical value, you reject the null hypothesis. So this will be our reference later during the decision making. And number 6, state the conclusion. Answer the question. Okay? Now let's go to example number 1. Here's our example. Okay. A, a researcher reports that the average salary of college deans is more than 63,000 pesos. A sample of 35 college deans has a mean salary of 65,700. At alpha, that is equal to 0.01, test the claim that the college deans earn is more than 63,000 a month. The standard deviation of the population is 5,250. So take note, this will be our formula kining duha. Now the question is, which among these two formulas are you gonna use over here in this problem? Kenisha, look at what is given. Are you given the sample standard deviation or the population standard deviation? Section Galileo, look at the problem. What is given? Is it the sample standard deviation or the population standard deviation?
Population.
Okay, from the given here, the standard deviation of the population is 5,000. That's why I will be using the population standard deviation formula. Now, let's identify the other givens. Now, sir, how will you determine whether it's the sample mean or the population mean? Okay, sir, it's given man, sir. X bar is the sample mean. U is the population mean. Go to your problem. Look at the word sample. A sample of 35 college deans has a mean salary of 65,000. So meaning, kining 65,700 pertains to the sample. So meaning this is the sample mean over here. Maunang ang akong sample mean is 65,700. And then the researcher rather, katong naghimo og study, ang researcher mauni siya ang population mean. So whatever is the report of the researcher, that is the population mean. Okay? Now, is this clear? Nganong population mean 63,000, sample mean 65,500. Is that clear, by the way, Section Galileo?
Yes, sir.
Okay, next. Now, what is alpha? Unsa gyud pasabot nato sa alpha? Unsa to pasabot nato sa alpha, Section Galileo? Alpha is the, look at the, it's stated here. It's found here. What is the alpha? Nag-discuss na taan na. What's alpha? Alpha is the level of significance. Diba ang alpha na to, pwede siyang 1%, pwede siyang 5%. So mo nang ang alpha nga giset sa problem is 1%. That's 0.01. Okay? So don't worry, ang kining alpha is given in the problem. Okay? Now let's continue. We have here n. You are given man 35 college deans, the sample of 35 college deans. Therefore, n there is 35. Okay? Now, let's go to step number 1. Step number 1 is based on this. Look at the claim. What is the claim? What is the claim here? The claim is this one. So this is now the claim that the college deans earn more than 63,000 a month. So meaning, mauni basihan ako sa akong alternative hypothesis. So meaning, based on this, kini siyang population mean, I'm gonna be using what? Unsa may symbol sa more than. So the population mean is more than 63,000. So mauni siya ang atuang, look at dawa. This is our claim. This is now the alternative hypothesis. Yeah, I mentioned a while ago katong pag last discussion nato, kung given gana ko ang greater than, unsagay atong null hypothesis ana? It should be less than or equal to. So take note ani ha. If you're given this claim, mauni siya ang claim, unsay null hypothesis ani? Ang opposite, less than or equal. If you're given this claim, unsay opposite ana? Okay, greater than or equal. If mauni ang claim equal, o unsa may opposite, I mean not equal. So unsa may opposite ani niya? Equal siya. Okay? Is this clear, by the way? Anyway, these are just mga notes nga itong i-take note lang. Okay? That's just the things that we need to consider. So again, it is stated here, more than 63,000. So therefore, the alternative hypothesis, the population mean is greater than 63,000. So our null hypothesis opposite sa greater than, that's why this is less than or equal to 63,000 pesos. Is step number 1 clear? Section Galileo is step number 1. Okay. Now, I'm gonna proceed to example number 2 para unahan itong step number 1. Okay? Now, look at example number 2. This time, the average baptismal cost includes 50 guests. A random sample of 32 baptismal during the past year in the NCR had a mean of 53 guests. A standard deviation of 10. Is there sufficient evidence at 0.05 level of significance that the average number of guests differs from the national average? Now, what is the standard deviation? What's the standard deviation? Now, why am I using the letter S? Because the standard deviation pertains to the sample. It's not stated the standard deviation of the population. Look at this sentence. The sentence here talks about the sample of 32 baptismal ceremonies. Okay? Now, there are a standard deviation of 10. So, meaning 10 is simply the sample standard deviation. And look at this 53. This is now the mean of the sample. Maunang sample mean na ko si 53. Yang average baptismal cost includes 50 guests. Kining 50 guests, mo ni siya ang population mean. Okay? Now, look at our N. N is 32. N is 32. You have it here. Okay? Now, is there sufficient evidence at 0.05 level of significance that the average number of guests differs from the national average? So look at our claim. The claim is this. Mo differ man siya, meaning dili siya mo equal sa 50 guests. That's why our claim is the population mean is not 50. So meaning, if it's not equal to 50, the null hypothesis is equal to 50, opposite niya. So mo ni ang paghimo sa step number 1. The step number 1 is based on the claim. Is this clear, by the way, section Galileo? Step number 1 is clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's go back to example 1. Let's do step number 2. So step number 2, don't worry about that. That's given in the problem. The level of significance that over here, that's the alpha, that's 0.01. The same thing with number 2. What is the level of significance in this example? It's 0.05. There you have it. So step number 2 is simply determine alpha, the level of significance. Now let's go to step number 3. The critical Z value. Okay. Sir, asa ni siya makitaan? Makitaan ni siya sa akong gihatag nga table karon lang. Look at this table over here. Sir, unsa nang one-tailed ug two-tailed? Okay, di ba I told you already, kung one-tailed gani siya, ang gigamit anang one-tailed, let me add notes first. Ang gigamit aning one-tailed kay kini nga symbols. Naa si greater than or less than, or naa si less than or si greater than. Ang two-tailed is kinira siya nga symbol ang given or pwede pod equal ra. Wala ang greater than or less than sa ato ang given. So ang gihatag lang aning two-tailed is this. Okay? Walay more than, walay less than nga gi-state sa problem. Now, going back to the problem. This is my question. Is this a two-tailed problem or a one-tailed problem? Do you see more than or less than in your problem?
Yes.
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 So there is the word more than, therefore this is a one-tailed test.
One.
Okay. So kung one-tailed test ni siya, look at the alpha, it's 0.01. So using this one, one-tailed niya 0.01. Sir, one-tailed 0.01. It's over here. One-tailed is here. Nya human 0.01. So meaning pila iyahang result nga gamiton nato sa Z, mauni atong gamiton 2.326. Mo nang 2.326 ang critical Z nato dire. So take note, sir, it's one-tailed. Yeah, sir, it's 0.01. So, meaning, I'm gonna be using 2.326. Kung 0.01 siya, niya, two-tailed, pila may value akong gamiton? Sige, go. 0.01 gihapon, pero two-tailed. Pila'y value akong gamiton? Very good. So, muna akong gamiton, 2.576. Okay? Now, what if I'm gonna be having 0.05 one-tailed? One-tailed. How much?
1.645.
Okay, there you go. What if two-tailed niya 0.05?
1.9.
Okay. So, this is how you use this table. Okay? So, meaning, this is now our critical Z. The critical Z value is 2.326. Take note of that. Okay? Now, this is okay already. Now, let's go to step number 3 sa problem 2 nato. Look at the problem. Naay less than or more than sa atong problem number 2? Wala. So, meaning this is two-tailed. So, problem number 2 is two-tailed. Now, two-tailed siya 0.05. Pila man ang two-tailed nga 0.05? There you 1.960. That's why we are using 1.960. So, nga nung positive man nag-negative, dapat lang na siya positive, negative. Nga naman, kay pwede man ang values nako positive, pwede ang values nako negative. Remember, di ba mo niya itong positive 0? Mga z ba? May positive 1, positive 2, positive 3, negative 1, negative 2. So, possible nga positive siya if it's over here. Possible po siya nga negative it's over here. Okay? So, just take note of that. Now, let's continue. Let's go back to the previous problem. Problem number 1. Now, let's compute the z now. So, using this formula, this is given already in your notes. So, we have the population, the sample mean, this value here. We have the population mean, this one. This is the standard deviation of the population and the n. So, computing this, you already know how to use this to compute this because nag-discuss na taan yung sa pag-compute ni z. You will be getting this value. Now, if you will be locating 3.043, take note, si 2.326 is here. Morning location ni 2.326. Tanawa si 3.04. It's located somewhere here. Naa siya sa shaded region. So, unsa gito pasabot nako kung naa siya sa shaded region, are you gonna reject HO or fail to reject HO? Katong discussion na to last time. Basta naa siya sa shaded region, maunay rejection region. Okay, there you go. We will be rejecting the null hypothesis. So, take note of that. And, awasan. Diba I told you a while ago, in decision making, dara. Ahatong decision making na to. There you go. If the computed z is greater than or equal to the critical z, reject HO. Okay? Okay ra jud dili mo mag-drawing og katong distribution table. Katong ato ang z the normal curve. It's okay nga i-refer lang ni nako diri, sir. I'm just gonna refer over here. It's very fine. So if the z, computed z is greater than the critical z, reject HO. If it's less than the critical z, do not reject HO. Look at this one. Is 3.03, which is the computed z, greater than the critical z? Yes, it is. Therefore, we reject HO. Kung sige to HO nato, ang HO nato kay, sir, less than or equal to 63 ang monthly or ang average salary sa mga college deans. Since we reject HO, therefore, the alternative hypothesis is true. So, meaning, kining claim is true. Look at the conclusion. So, we reject the null hypothesis. Therefore, there is enough evidence to support the claim that the monthly salary of the dean is more than 63,000 pesos. So, meaning, gi-accept ang claim nga ang monthly salary is 63,000 pesos. Questions about example number 1? Section Galileo, is example number 1 clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's proceed to example number 2. I-continue na tong example number 2. Let's go to the critical z value right away. So, okay naman ni, kay nakabaw naman taning step 3. Step number 4, we have already identified this. This is the sample mean, 53. That's already identified ganiha. That's based on our problem. And we have the population mean, the standard deviation of 10, and a sample mean number of, a sample of 32. So computing this, you will get this value. Now, you compare this. Is this value greater than or less than the critical Z? You compare the computed with the critical Z. I-compare ng duha. Is it less than or greater than?
Less than.
Less than. Okay.
Less
If
than.
it's less than, unsa gito ang decision if it's less than?
Do not reject.
Okay. That's fail to reject HO or do not reject HO. So meaning, our do not reject the null hypothesis. Since it is the computed Z is less than the critical Z. Okay? If you're gonna draw the distribution curve there, the 1.697 is located outside the rejection region. Moonang we will not be rejecting the null hypothesis. So meaning, this will be our conclusion. Since we do not reject the hypothesis, we conclude that there is no enough evidence to support the claim that the average guessed in the baptismal is not equal to 50. Okay, the claim is dili siya equal ni 50. Okay, it's stated here, mo differ man. So when you say mo differ, dili siya 50. So meaning, ang claim nato is walay enough evidence to support the claim. Okay? So take note aning step number 6. Is step number 6 clear? So ang atong conclusion ani, it's so simple. Kung mo reject ta, ingani lang, since we reject the null hypothesis, we can conclude that there is enough evidence to support the claim that the monthly salary of the college dean is more than 63,000. Now, if we will not be rejecting, meaning we will not reject HO, failed to reject, we will conclude that there is no or not enough evidence, okay, to support the claim that the average guess in a baptismal is not equal to 50. Is example 1 and 2 clear? Section Galileo, is example 1 and 2 clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, this time.
Yes, sir.
Ang 1 and 2 is using the critical Z. In problem number 3, we will be using the p-value. Okay? So, take that lang, ana. Okay. A researcher claims that a monthly consumption of coffee per person is more than 19 cups. Oh, look at this one. Is this two-tailed or one-tailed?
One tail.
Okay, now, in this example, by the way, sir, di man ako gamiton ang Z dira, sir, because I will be using the p-value. Now, if you're gonna be using the p-value, by the way, you will not determine whether it is, if it's, how do you call this? If it is two-tailed or one-tailed. Inyo lang i-compute right away ang Z, then go to the table of Z's, look for the P there. Okay? So, meaning, identify lang nato ang given. So, ang given nako, 19 cups will be the population mean. The sample mean is 20 because it's stated here, a sample of 60 is N. The mean of that sample is 20, so the sample mean is 20. The average or the standard deviation of the sample is 4 cups. So meaning, I will be using this over this formula. But before that, let's do step number 1. So step number 1, what is the claim? The claim is more than 19 cups. Mo nang the population mean is more than 19 cups. So, usay opposite sa more than gani ang hando gamiton ani, it should be less than or equal to. Mo nang akong gigamit sa null hypothesis. Okay? So, take note, ang alternative hypothesis is the claim, opposite ana maoy atong null hypothesis. Now, the level of significance, it's stated there, it's 0.01. So that's step number 2 already. Now let's compute the sample Z. So you have there 20 minus 19 divided by 4 divided by the square root of 60. If you're gonna solve this, that's 1.94. Refer to the table. What is 1.94 equal to? 1.94. What is that equal to?
0.4738.
Okay, 0.4738. Maunay gisolve nako nga p-value. So that is now the p-value. The p-value is 0.4738. So meaning, ighuman akong solve ni Z, I'll use the Z table. I will find the value of the P for that Z value. So it's 0.4738. Now, why is there a need to subtract 50 from this? Okay, there you go. Nganong isubtract man na nato? Okay, ako na yung drawing. I will be comparing manggod. So, take note, this is 50%. The whole thing. Ang kining 0.4738 is this part here. Okay? Kini siya ang 4738. Now, I will be comparing it to 0.1 man, 0.01. So, I will be just using asa may dako. Is it this or this part here? So, muna ako ang comparison now. So, I will be subtracting all the time. Take note of that. I will be subtracting 0.05 by the p-value. And you will get 0.026. 0.062, I mean. 0.0262. So, this is now the p-value. Sir, how do you decide now? It's so simple. The decision making is this. If the p-value is greater than 0.1, the alpha, then we will not reject the null hypothesis. If the p-value is less than 0.01, then we will reject the null hypothesis. Take note of that. So, take note ha, sa p-values. I-reject na nato p-value is greater than the alpha. This is do not reject. Okay? This is do not reject. What if the p-value is less than the alpha? The level of significance. This is reject HO. So, take note lang, ana, ha? So, take note of this. So, take note, wala na ako gi-compare sa Z. Gi-compare na ako sa level of significance, the alpha. Now, since this value is greater than 0.01, do not reject the null hypothesis. So, meaning, ang atong conclusion is now, we fail to reject the null hypothesis. So, we can conclude that the monthly consumption of the person is not more than 19 cups. Because the claim is, usay claim ani? Ang claim is more than. So, meaning, pwede dito mo decide og, mo conclude nga, sir, since akong i-reject ang HO biya nato, sir, kay, it's O sige, HO na to, ani? Ang HO na to is less than or equal. Right? That's our HO. Nya, what is our alternative hypothesis? So meaning, if you will be making your decision now, you conclude, so we fail to reject the null hypothesis. Fail to reject means do not reject the null hypothesis. So we will be having this conclusion here. We can conclude that the monthly consumption of the coffee per person is not more than 19 cups. Okay? Is this clear, by the way, Section Galileo?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's go to example number 4 now. Example number 4. So here, powder milk is packed in 1 kilogram bag. An inspector from the Department of Trade and Industry suspects the bag may not contain 1 kilogram. A sample of 40 bags, so take note, ang powdered milk dapat 1 kilogram. Nya ang inspector sa DTI ni suspect ni hatag siya assumption ay wala na nag-contain og 1 kilogram. Dili siya equal sa 1 kilogram. Now, a sample of 40 bags produces a mean of 0.96 kilograms and a standard deviation of 0.12 kilograms. Is there enough evidence to conclude that the bags do not contain 1 kilogram as stated at 0.05 level of significance? So, take note of this. Ato sang identify. Is this a two-tailed or a one-tailed test?
Two-tailed.
Two-tailed. Okay, walay less than, walay more than atong problem. It's two-tailed. Okay, take note of that. Now, 0.96 kilograms is what? It's the sample. Take note of that. It's the sample mean. Now, what is 1 kilogram here? It's the population mean. Okay? The standard deviation of the sample is 0.12 kilogram. And your sample, that's 40 bags. Okay? Now, the claim is, this is the claim, may not contain. So when you say do not contain, it means it's not equal to 1. That's why our alternative hypothesis, the alternative hypothesis is the population mean is not equal to 1. This is the claim. So, opposite ani niya is the null hypothesis. So, meaning, the population mean is equal to 1 kilogram. So, that's step number 1. Now, step number 2. What is the level of significance? It's 0.05. Now, the T critical value is 1.96. Look at our table. Take note, this is 0.05 and it's a two-tailed. 0.05, it's two-tailed. It's over here, this value. Okay? So, it's 1.96. Mo nang the critical T value is 1.96. Positive, negative. Okay? Now, let's compute the Z value now. So, using this formula, 0.96, that's our given a while ago, minus the population mean, divided by the standard deviation, divided by the square root of the sample. So, this will be the result, negative 2.108. Okay, let's compare. Is this what is now your conclusion? is this greater than this? Is the z value greater than the t critical value? Take note how we will be getting the absolute values here. So, examine. Is this greater than this? When you take the absolute value, what do you do when you take the absolute value, by the way? You make it positive. So, is 2.108 greater than 1.960?
Yes, sir.
Yes, it is. It's greater than. So, what will be your decision? Will you reject or do not reject?
Reject, sir.
Reject. So, take note, if the value is greater than, always reject the hypothesis, the null. So, if I'm gonna draw that, look at this. I will draw this. I'm gonna locate this in our distribution curve. So, see, negative 2.108, it's located here. It's found in the shaded region. It's found in the rejection region. Maunang, I will be rejecting HO. Since we will be rejecting